Flashing lights pierce the night. A black single mom, kids asleep in her sputtering Civic, is pulled over. Aggressive cops, false claims, a violent shove. They wreck her car, leaving her stranded, terrified. Feel the chill as the officers smirk. Then pure panic when they discover the call she just made. To her brother, a Green Beret en route from Fort Bragg. Witness the collision of injustice and unshakable resolve. Will courage bend the system? The humid breath of an East Charlotte, North Carolina night pressed against the windows of Kendra Ellis's 2008 Honda Civic. It was late, creeping towards the hour when the city exhaled and settled into uneasy dreams. Kendra, 32, felt the exhaustion deep in her bones, a familiar ache after a 12-hour shift wrestling sickness and tending to fragile lives at Mercy Hospital. Her hands, chapped from constant washing, gripped the worn steering wheel. Beside her, the check engine light glowed like a malevolent eye, a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety mirroring her own. The car, affectionately nicknamed the little engine that might, was sputtering again, a rhythmic hiccup that promised future expense she couldn't afford. In the back seat, her world slept. Jaden, 7 years old with his father's serious eyes, was slumped against the side window, mouth slightly open. Nia, 5, her hair escaping its braids, had her head lolled back against the booster seat, one tiny hand curled near her cheek. The car seats themselves were testaments to Kendra's reality, sturdy frames held together in places by strips of stubborn gray duct tape, symbols of making do, of stretching every dollar until it screamed. Seeing them peaceful, oblivious to the precariousness of their mother's finances and the car threatening to die beneath them, brought a fierce, protective surge through Kendra's fatigue. This was why she worked the night shifts, why she pushed through the bone-deep weariness. For them, she navigated the familiar streets, the sodium lamps casting long, distorted shadows that danced like ghosts on the cracked pavement. Dilapidated storefronts stood beside hopeful new murals, the scent of late-night frying grease mingled with the sweet perfume of blooming jasmine spilling over a chain-link fence. East Charlotte was a place of contrasts, of resilience etched onto a landscape of neglect. It was home. Then, the world dissolved into flashing blue and red. The lights filled her rearview mirror, strobing violently, painting the interior of the Civic in panicked bursts of color. Kendra's heart leaped into her throat, a frantic bird trapped in her ribs. She instinctively checked her speed. Barely 30. She scanned her memory, signal use, lane changes, everything by the book. Yet, the lights persisted, growing larger, closer. Okay, she murmured, her voice tight. She slowed, pulling over to the curb beneath a flickering streetlight, the Civic shuddering as if in protest. She killed the sputtering engine, plunging the car into a sudden, tense silence broken only by the soft breathing of her children and the approaching crunch of heavy boots on asphalt. Two figures emerged from the patrol car, silhouetted against the flashing lights. One was broad, thick-set, moving with an air of practiced authority that bordered on aggression. The other was leaner, younger, walking a step behind, his movements slightly hesitant. Kendra forced herself to take slow, deep breaths, schooling her features into neutrality, a mask she'd learned to wear too often. Be calm. Be polite. Don't give them a reason. A flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, hitting her eyes, blinding her momentarily. License and registration. Now. The voice was gravelly impatient. This was the older one, the broad one. His name tag, glimpsed briefly, read Dawson. Kendra fumbled with the glove compartment, her hands suddenly clumsy. Officer, she began, her voice trembling despite her efforts. My kids are asleep in the back. I didn't ask about your kids. Dawson snapped, cutting her off sharply. The beam stayed fixed on her face, pinning her. Step out of the vehicle. Now. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Kendra's exhaustion. Why? Why step out? It wasn't standard procedure for a simple check. Her mind raced. Expired tags? No, paid them last month. Broken taillight? Checked them yesterday. Nothing made sense, but the command backed by the uniform and the weapon on his hip was absolute. Okay, officer, she said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. Just let me get my purse. As she reached for her bag on the passenger seat, the younger officer, Murphy, moved closer to her open window. He leaned in slightly, his eyes scanning the back seat. Kendra eased the car door open, the old hinges groaning in protest. As she swung her legs out, Murphy shifted, bumping her arm. Her phone, which had been resting on her lap, clattered onto the pavement, screen down. Oops, Murphy muttered, not sounding sorry at all. He made no move to pick it up. Kendra stared down at her phone, the lifeline connecting her to the world, to potential help now lying useless on the gritty asphalt. It felt deliberate, a calculated move to isolate her further. Dawson ignored the incident. He shone his flashlight onto her license plate. "Tags are expired," he declared, his tone flat, final. "No, officer, they're not," Kendra protested, finding a sliver of courage. "I paid them online last month. I have the confirmation email on my phone." She gestured towards the fallen device. Dawson waved a dismissive hand. "System says expired. Means they're expired. We need to search the vehicle." "Search?" Kendra's voice rose slightly. "On what grounds? You can't just—" "We can," Dawson interrupted, stepping closer, invading her personal space. She could smell stale coffee and cigarettes on his breath. "Probable cause. Expired tags. Suspicious behavior." "What suspicious behavior?" Kendra demanded, her fear now laced with indignation. "Driving home from work? Being a black woman in an old car?" Dawson's eyes narrowed. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "You got a mouth on you, don't you?" He shoved her hard against the hood of the Civic. The metal was cool beneath her cheek, the impact jarring. She gasped, tasting dust and humiliation. "Mommy!" A terrified cry erupted from the back seat. Jaden was awake, his small face pressed against the window, eyes wide with fear. Nia stirred beside him, whimpering. "It's okay, baby," Kendra choked out, trying to project a calm she didn't feel. "Mommy's okay. Just talking to the officers." Dawson ignored the children. "Murphy, check the trunk." Murphy, looking increasingly uncomfortable but obeying instantly, moved to the back of the car. He fumbled with the keys Kendra had left in the ignition, then jammed one into the trunk lock. He yanked the trunk open with unnecessary force. It contained exactly what Kendra knew it did. A folded stroller, a first aid kit from her nursing bag, jumper cables, and a worn spare tire. Nothing suspicious. Nothing illegal. Murphy peered inside for a moment, then slammed the trunk lid shut with a resounding thud that echoed in the quiet street. It was too hard, a violent, careless act. Kendra heard a faint, sickening crunch. She knew instinctively that something had given way. The already fragile frame around the trunk latch, likely weakened by age and rust, wouldn't have withstood that kind of force. Dawson leaned down, his face close to Kendra's. He smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Trunk suspiciously empty," he drawled. "You hiding something somewhere else?" He ran his flashlight beam slowly over the car's interior again, lingering on the sleeping children, then back to Kendra pinned against the hood. Kendra squeezed her eyes shut, fighting back tears of rage and helplessness. This wasn't about expired tags. This was about power. It was about intimidation. It was about the color of her skin and the age of her car, marking her as an easy target in their eyes. After another agonizing minute of pointless scrutiny, Dawson seemed to lose interest. "All right," he grunted, stepping back. "Get your phone. We'll let you off with a warning this time. But get those tags fixed." He didn't wait for a response, just turned and walked back towards the patrol car, Murphy trailing silently behind him. Shaking, Kendra pushed herself off the hood. She knelt and picked up her phone. The screen was shattered, a spiderweb of cracks radiating from the impact point. It wouldn't turn on. She felt a fresh wave of despair wash over her. She slid back into the driver's seat, her body trembling. Jaden was crying softly now, fat tears rolling down his cheeks. Nia was awake too, her lower lip quivering. "It's okay, babies," Kendra whispered, her voice thick. "We're okay. They're gone." She reached back, squeezing Jaden's knee, offering Nia a shaky smile. She put the key in the ignition and turned. The engine gave a pathetic groan, a strangled whirring sound, then silence. She tried again. Nothing. The familiar sputter was gone, replaced by an ominous deadness. The impact of the trunk slam, the jarring shove against the hood, it had been the final straw for the ailing Civic. Panic, real and suffocating, tightened its grip. Stranded. Late at night. On a dark street. With 2 frightened children and a dead car. And a broken phone. She tried the phone again, pressing the power button repeatedly, willing it to life. Nothing. She fought back a sob. Think, Kendra, think. Who could she call? Her mother lived 2 states away. Her friends likely wouldn't answer unknown numbers this late, assuming she could even find a working payphone nearby, a relic of a bygone era. Then a name surfaced through the fog of fear: Marcus. Her brother. Sergeant First Class Marcus Carter. Green Beret. Stationed at Fort Bragg, a couple of hours away. He always answered, no matter the time, no matter the number. He was her rock, her protector since their father died when they were teenagers. She scanned the street. A small, all-night convenience store glowed faintly a block down. Gathering her children, pulling them close, Kendra locked the dead Civic, a futile gesture, and started walking towards the light, her heart pounding with a mixture of residual fear and a rising tide of anger. Inside the store, the clerk, a young man with tired eyes, let her use the landline behind the counter after she explained her situation in clipped tones. She dialed Marcus's number from memory, her fingers trembling. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice instantly alert even through the sleep-roughened edge. "Kendra? What's wrong?" "It's almost 2 a.m. Tears finally broke free, hot and stinging. "Marcus," she sobbed, the word catching in her throat. The police, they stopped me. They messed with my car. It won't start. The kids, they're scared." She quickly recounted the stop, the false accusation, the shove, the slamming of the trunk, the broken phone, the dead engine. Each word felt like pulling shrapnel from a wound. There was a silence on the other end, but it wasn't empty. It was a heavy, coiled silence, pregnant with controlled fury. Kendra knew that silence. It was the calm before the storm, the deep breath a trained soldier takes before confronting a threat. "Where are you, Ken?" His voice was dangerously quiet now, stripped of all emotion except a chilling, steely resolve. She gave him the cross streets, the name of the convenience store. "Stay there. Lock the doors if you can. Don't talk to anyone else." Another pause, then through gritted teeth, the sound sharp even over the phone line, "I'm on my way." The line clicked dead. Kendra hung up the receiver, leaning her forehead against the cool plastic of the phone booth. Relief warred with a cold dread for what might come next. Marcus wasn't just her brother, he was a force of nature when roused, especially when his family was threatened. The officers who had casually wrecked her car and terrorized her children had no idea who they just provoked. They had messed with the wrong family. And Sergeant First Class Marcus Carter was on his way. The highway stretched before Marcus Carter like a ribbon of asphalt unfurling into darkness, the rhythmic thud of tires on pavement a metronomic beat against the roar of his truck's engine. He drove fast, pushing the needle well past the legal limit, Fort Bragg shrinking rapidly in his rearview mirror. The fatigues he still wore felt tight, restrictive, a second skin meant for a different kind of battlefield. But this was personal. His mind, trained for tactical assessment and rapid response, kept replaying Kendra's choked words. "They stopped me, messed with my car, kids, scared." Each phrase landed like a physical blow. He pictured his sister, strong, resilient Kendra, who juggled single motherhood, nursing shifts, and a perpetually failing car with a grace that humbled him, being shoved against her own vehicle, her children watching in terror. He saw Jaden's wide, frightened eyes, Nia's trembling lip, a cold, hard knot formed in his gut, familiar yet different. Flashes of Afghanistan flickered at the edges of his vision, the sudden, concussive blast of an IED, the wary faces of villagers caught between warring forces, the constant thrum of danger. He'd faced down armed insurgents, navigated treacherous mountain passes, felt the weight of life-and-death decisions resting squarely on his shoulders. He understood fear, violence, the abuse of power. But this was different. This wasn't a foreign enemy in a distant land. This was home. This was Charlotte. This was his sister, targeted not by insurgents, but by the very people sworn to protect and serve. The familiar landscape felt alien, hostile. The blue and red lights he'd just passed on a patrol car heading the other way didn't signify safety, they sparked a surge of visceral anger. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white. He'd spent years defending ideals, freedom, justice, in faraway places, trusting that those same principles held firm back home. Kendra's call shattered that illusion. The casual cruelty, the blatant disregard for her rights, the implication that her life, her children's security, her property were disposable, it was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. 2 hours felt like an eternity. By the time he pulled up to Kendra's modest apartment complex in East Charlotte, the first hints of dawn were painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and gray. He found her apartment door unlocked. Inside, the small living room was dimly lit. Kendra wasn't crying anymore. She was on her hands and knees in the small kitchen galley, scrubbing the linoleum floor with a ferocity that was almost violent. Her movements were jerky, repetitive, her eyes fixed on the worn pattern beneath her brush. Jaden and Nia were huddled together on the threadbare sofa, wrapped in a shared blanket, their eyes tracking their mother's frantic movements. They looked small, lost. Marcus's heart clenched. He recognized this. It wasn't about cleaning. It was about control, about trying to scrub away the feeling of helplessness, the violation. It was a trauma response, as clear as any battlefield shock he'd witnessed. He knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her arm. She flinched, then looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice raw. "I'm here, Ken," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion he rarely showed. "I'm here." He pulled her up, ignoring the dampness from the floor clinging to her clothes, and held her close. She sagged against him, a choked sob escaping her lips. "They didn't even care, Marcus," she wept into his fatigues. They didn't care." Over her shoulder, he met Jaden's gaze. The boy's eyes held a mixture of fear and a dawning, watchful intensity. Marcus gave him a small, reassuring nod he didn't entirely feel. "It's okay now," Marcus murmured, stroking Kendra's hair. But his eyes hardened as he looked around the small, clean apartment, at the sleeping children, at his sister trembling in his arms. A cold fury settled over him, precise and deadly. They messed with the wrong family. Miles away, but woven into the same fabric of community and injustice, Rivera was already mobilizing. At 40, Anna was a whirlwind of focused energy, a community activist whose passion was fueled by personal experience and a deep love for her neighborhood. Her small office, crammed into a repurposed storefront, buzzed even before the sun was fully up. Phones rang, volunteers brewed coffee, and Anna stood before a whiteboard, mapping out a plan. News of Kendra's stop had spread quickly through the tight-knit network of activists and concerned residents. Someone at the convenience store knew someone who knew Anna. It was the way things worked here. Whispers became calls to action. For Anna, Kendra's story struck a painfully familiar chord. 2 years ago, her own brother, Mateo, had been pulled over for a broken taillight. He was undocumented, working hard, sending money home. The traffic stop escalated. Questions turned into demands for papers he didn't have. And within weeks, he was deported, tearing a hole in their family that still ached. "This is the same pattern," Anna said, her voice ringing with conviction as she addressed the small group of early morning volunteers. "A minor pretext, escalation, intimidation. It's about control, about reminding certain communities who holds the power. We need to make noise. Now," she pointed to the whiteboard. "Precinct protest. Today. Noon. We need signs, we need people, we need media." Her gaze was fierce. "They count on us being too tired, too scared, too isolated. We need to show them they're wrong." Meanwhile, the ripples of Kendra's experience were spreading through other channels. Ms. Beatrice Clark, 68, a retired schoolteacher with eyes that had seen decades of change and stagnation in Charlotte, heard the story from her neighbor whose cousin worked the night shift with Kendra. Ms. Clark, a pillar of her local Baptist church, felt a familiar weariness settle upon her, quickly followed by a surge of indignation. "Lord have mercy," she murmured, adjusting the glasses perched on her nose. She picked up her phone, her fingers, though wrinkled with age, dialing numbers with practiced speed. First, Deacon Williams. Then Sister Evelyn from the choir. Then Reverend Michael. "Reverend," she said, her voice calm but firm, "there's been another incident. Young sister, Kendra Ellis, nurse at Mercy. Pulled over last night, police damaged her car, scared her babies half to death." "Yes, East Charlotte. Officers Dawson and Murphy, yes, that Dawson." Her voice hardened slightly. "We've seen this before, Reverend. We buried Michael Jr. because of before. We can't let it happen again. I'm telling everyone I know. We need prayers, yes, but we need presence too. Anna Rivera is organizing something at the precinct. Yes, I'll be there. We all need to be there. This time it has to be different." Back at the East Charlotte precinct, officers Rick Dawson and Tom Murphy were starting their day shift, unaware of the storm gathering around them. Dawson swaggered in, grabbing coffee, joking loudly with another veteran cop about the previous night's game. Murphy trailed behind, quieter, his youthful eagerness slightly dimmed. It was mid-morning when the desk sergeant called them over, his expression grim. "Got a call from dispatch. Military police liaison from Bragg. Asking about a traffic stop last night. Ellis, Kendra. Ring any bells?" Dawson's easygoing demeanor vanished. He exchanged a quick, uneasy glance with Murphy. "Yeah, we stopped her. Expired tags. Gave her a warning." "Well, her brother is Sergeant First Class Marcus Carter. Green Beret," the sergeant said, letting the title hang in the air. "He wasn't happy. Said his sister's car was damaged, she was mistreated. He drove down from Bragg overnight." A cold sweat prickled Murphy's neck. A Green Beret. Not just some random complaint. Military brass had a way of making noise that civilians couldn't. He remembered slamming the trunk. He remembered Dawson shoving the woman. He remembered the fear in the children's eyes. Dawson scoffed, trying to regain his composure, but his eyes darted nervously. "She's exaggerating. Car was a piece of junk anyway. Probably died on its own. Maybe, the sergeant said, unconvinced. But command staff is already asking questions. And there's chatter about a protest being organized for noon. This Ellis stop. He fixed Dawson with a hard stare. Your name keeps coming up, Rick. Again. Later, hiding in the sterile quiet of the men's locker room, Murphy felt the panic truly set in. He pulled out his phone and called his fiancée, Lisa. Hey, he said, his voice low, urgent. Something happened last night. He quickly recounted the stop, his voice trembling slightly. Rick, Dawson, he escalated everything. Claimed her tags were expired. Made her get out. Shoved her. I might have slammed the trunk too hard. Her car wouldn't start after. Tommy, oh my God, Lisa whispered back. Did you report it? Report Rick? Are you kidding? Murphy's voice cracked. He's got seniority connections. He'd bury me. He's done stuff like this before, Lisa. Minor stops that turn ugly. I froze. I didn't know what to do. You need to tell someone, Lisa insisted. Before it gets worse. It's already worse, Murphy said miserably, hearing the distant sounds of the precinct gearing up for the day, oblivious to the firestorm heading its way. Her brother, he's special forces. He hung up, the phone feeling heavy in his hand. He had wanted to be a good cop, make a difference. But standing by, watching Dawson operate, saying nothing, was that any different from being him? The realization sickened him. He hadn't just frozen. He'd been complicit. And now the soldier was coming. The digital ink was barely dry on Jake Collins's article, but it was already spreading like wildfire across Charlotte's social media feeds, amplified by shares from Ana Rivera's rapidly growing network and concerned citizens citywide. Jake, 34, a tenacious investigative reporter for the Charlotte Chronicle, had a knack for digging where others wouldn't. He'd started with a tip about the planned protest at the East Charlotte precinct, cross-referenced it with the initial, sanitized police report of Kendra's stop, noting the discrepancy about the tags, and then pulled the thread on Officer Rick Dawson. It didn't take long to unravel. A quick search of court records and archived news yielded gold, or rather, damning evidence. A 2016 lawsuit alleging excessive force during an arrest, quietly settled out of court by the city. A 2019 internal affairs complaint alleging racial profiling during a traffic stop involving another black woman. Marked unfounded, despite corroborating witness statements Jake managed to unearth from the complainant's frustrated lawyer. Anonymous sources within the department, emboldened by the Green Beret connection and perhaps their own consciences, hinted at other incidents, a pattern of behavior known and tolerated within the ranks. Jake's piece, titled Pattern of Abuse? Officer in viral stop has history of complaints, laid it all out. Dawson's record, the questionable findings of internal affairs, the context of Kendra's stop, and the looming presence of her military brother. He embedded photos Ana Rivera had sent him from the burgeoning protest outside the precinct, images of Kendra's neighbors, church members led by Ms. Clark, young activists holding signs demanding justice for Kendra, end police brutality. Accountability now? The juxtaposition was powerful, the documented history of misconduct alongside the faces of a community saying enough. The article landed like a bombshell on the desk of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Chief Amanda Wright. At 54, Chief Wright was a formidable figure, a black woman who had navigated the treacherous currents of law enforcement politics to reach the top spot in a department historically dominated by white men. She'd walked a tightrope, pushing for reform while trying to maintain the loyalty of her rank and file, battling systemic issues from within a system often resistant to change. She prided herself on fairness, on procedure. But Dawson was a recurring headache, a symbol of the old guard's worst tendencies. And now, with a Green Beret brother involved and the media circling, this wasn't just a headache, it was a full-blown crisis threatening to undermine every reform she'd painstakingly tried to implement. Her intercom buzzed. Chief, Sergeant First Class Marcus Carter is here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but her assistant's voice trailed off, implying the insistence was non-negotiable. Send him in, Wright said, bracing herself. Marcus Carter entered her office, still in his fatigues from the drive down. He moved with a quiet intensity, his posture erect, his gaze direct and unwavering. There was no overt aggression, but the contained energy in the room was palpable. He didn't look like a man prone to hysterics or exaggeration. He looked like a man who dealt in facts, consequences, and mission completion. He declined the offer of a seat, standing before her desk. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, measured, but carried an unmistakable undercurrent of lethal seriousness. "Chief Wright," he began, his tone respectful but firm. "My sister, Kendra Ellis, was unlawfully detained, verbally abused, and physically intimidated by two of your officers last night. Officers Dawson and Murphy. Her vehicle was intentionally damaged, leaving her stranded with her two young children. Her phone was broken, preventing her from calling for immediate help." He paused, letting the words sink in. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an abuse of power, seemingly racially motivated, perpetrated by an officer, Dawson, who your department knows has a history of such behavior. He gestured vaguely towards the city outside the window. "I understand Officer Dawson has a documented history, complaints that were conveniently buried." Chief Wright met his gaze, her expression carefully neutral. "Sergeant Carter, I assure you we are taking this matter very seriously. Internal Affairs has opened an investigation." Marcus held up a hand, cutting her off, not disrespectfully but with the authority of someone who wouldn't be placated by bureaucratic procedure. "With all due respect, Chief, Internal Affairs already had their chance with Officer Dawson. They failed. My sister isn't a file number. Her children aren't statistics. The fear they felt last night is real. The damage to her property is real. The pattern of behavior is real." He stepped fractionally closer, lowering his voice slightly, making it more intense. "I didn't spend years overseas fighting for principles that are trampled on in my own backyard, against my own family. You have 48 hours, Chief. 48 hours to arrest Officer Dawson for assault and destruction of property, and to take appropriate action regarding Officer Murphy's complicity. 48 hours to demonstrate that CMPD polices its own." His eyes, hard and resolute, locked onto hers. "If substantive action is not taken within that time frame, I will escalate this through my channels. I will make damn sure the Pentagon, the Veterans Affairs Administration, and every national news outlet knows that the city of Charlotte harbors and protects officers who prey on vulnerable citizens, specifically black women and mothers. I will use every resource available to me, military and civilian, to expose the rot this incident represents." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The quiet, controlled fury, the sheer determination radiating from him was more potent than any shout. It was the calculated threat of a man trained to analyze weaknesses and exploit them, a man who understood leverage. Chief Wright felt a chill despite the controlled climate of her office. She recognized the steel in his voice. This wasn't posturing. It was a promise. She thought of the political fallout, the media frenzy, the damage to the department's already fragile relationship with the community, the pressure from City Hall, the potential federal scrutiny. "Sergeant," she said, choosing her words carefully, "I understand your anger. I share your outrage that any citizen, let alone your sister, would experience such treatment. Procedures must be followed, but I assure you this investigation will be swift and thorough. We will get to the bottom of this." Marcus simply nodded, his expression unreadable. 48 hours, Chief." He turned crisply and walked out, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Chief Wright sank back into her chair, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The tightrope she walked just got infinitely thinner. Dawson's time, she knew, was up. The question now was how much damage he'd do to the department on his way down and whether removing him would be enough to satisfy a community and a brother pushed too far. That evening, the basement meeting room of Ms. Clark's church pulsed with energy. What started as a small gathering Anna Rivera hoped to organize had swelled, fueled by Jake's article, Ms. Clark's phone tree, and raw, simmering frustration. People packed the room, black, white, Latino, young, old, longtime residents, and newcomers. They were neighbors, church members, fellow nurses from Mercy, parents who saw their own children in Jaden and Nia. Anna stood at the front, facilitating, her voice clear and strong, channeling the collective anger into purpose. "This isn't just about Kendra," she declared. "This is about every person who's been profiled, harassed, dismissed. Every parent who fears for their child when they see flashing lights. We are here tonight to support Kendra, but also to demand systemic change." Ms. Clark, seated near the front, nodded grimly. She'd seen too many meetings like this over the years, sparked by tragedy or outrage, only to see the energy dissipate, the promises fade. But something felt different tonight. Maybe it was the soldier brother. Maybe it was the instant media attention. Maybe people were just finally, truly fed up. Kendra sat between Marcus and Ms. Clark, drawing strength from their presence. She hadn't wanted to come, hadn't wanted to speak. The trauma was too fresh, the humiliation too raw. But Marcus had gently insisted, saying her voice needed to be heard, not just as a victim, but as a survivor demanding accountability. When Anna invited her to share her story, Kendra hesitated. Marcus gave her hand a supportive squeeze. Ms. Clark patted her knee. She took a deep breath and walked to the makeshift podium, looking out at the sea of expectant, empathetic faces. She started hesitantly, her voice trembling as she recounted the flashing lights, the officer's demands, the fear that gripped her. But as she spoke, her voice gained strength, fueled by the injustice, the violation. She described Dawson's smirk, Murphy's deliberate carelessness, the terrifying moment she realized her car was dead, her phone broken, her children crying. Then the dam broke. Tears streamed down her face, not just tears of fear, but tears of anger, of exhaustion, of a mother's fierce protective instinct thwarted. How she cried out, her voice cracking with anguish, the question echoing the raw vulnerability shared by so many parents in the room. How do I explain this to my babies? I teach them the police are the good guys, the helpers. They saw those men hurt their mama. They saw them break our car. How do I make them feel safe again when the people supposed to protect us are the ones who brought the fear? Her raw, heartbreaking question hung in the air, resonating deeply with everyone present. It wasn't just about policy or procedure anymore. It was about the shattered trust between a community and its protectors, about the psychological scars left on innocent children, about the impossible burden placed on parents trying to navigate a world where safety felt conditional, precarious, dependent on the color of your skin or the neighborhood you lived in. In that moment of shared vulnerability and righteous anger, a scattered group of individuals began to truly coalesce into a force demanding change. Kendra's breakdown wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a catalyst, igniting a collective resolve that would not be easily extinguished. The pressure cooker that was the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department finally blew. Faced with Marcus Carter's unwavering deadline, the viral spread of Jake Collins's article, mounting public outrage fueled by the community meeting, and the undeniable evidence of Dawson's history coupled with Murphy's increasingly desperate and eventually formal confession to internal affairs about the events of the stop, Chief Amanda Wright acted decisively. 47 hours after Marcus Carter stood in her office, Officer Rick Dawson was served with termination papers citing departmental policy violations including excessive force, unprofessional conduct, and falsifying reports. Regarding the license tags, simultaneously, the district attorney's office, under intense scrutiny, announced criminal charges: misdemeanor assault on Kendra Ellis and felony destruction of property related to the Civic's damaged frame. Dawson, stripped of his badge and gun, found himself on the other side of the law he'd so carelessly wielded. Officer Tom Murphy, facing intense questioning and seeing the writing on the wall, tendered his resignation before disciplinary proceedings could formally commence. His confession, detailing Dawson's aggression and his own failure to intervene or accurately report the incident, became a key piece of evidence against Dawson, though it offered little solace to those who saw his resignation as an evasion of true accountability. He slipped away from the department, a cautionary tale of complicity and cowardice. The firing and charges were significant victories, but for Anna Rivera, Ms. Clark, and the coalition that had formed around Kendra's case, it wasn't the endgame. Individual accountability is crucial, Anna stated at a press conference held on the courthouse steps, flanked by Kendra and Marcus, but it's not enough. We need systemic change to prevent this from happening again. Their demands were clear: mandatory, always-on body cameras for all officers, the establishment of a robust, independent civilian oversight board with subpoena power, and revised training protocols focused on de-escalation and implicit bias. They kept the pressure on, organizing peaceful demonstrations, packing city council meetings, and leveraging the ongoing media attention generated by Jake Collins's follow-up reports. The trial of Rick Dawson, though focused on the specific charges related to Kendra's stop, became a proxy battleground for these larger issues. The courtroom in the Mecklenburg County Courthouse buzzed with tension. Kendra testified, her voice steady now, recounting the events with painful clarity. Marcus sat in the front row, a silent, imposing presence in civilian clothes, his gaze fixed on Dawson. But perhaps the most powerful testimony came from Ms. Beatrice Clark. Called by the prosecution as a community witness to establish context, a move initially contested by the defense but allowed by the judge recognizing the public interest, Ms. Clark took the stand, her small frame radiating quiet dignity. She didn't speak about Kendra directly. Instead, she spoke about 1998. She spoke about her own son, Michael Jr., then a promising college student home for the summer. Pulled over for allegedly fitting the description of a robbery suspect. Arrested, roughed up, held for 48 hours before being released without charges when the actual suspect, who looked nothing like him, was caught. She spoke of the fear that never left him, the promising future derailed by suspicion and a wrongful arrest that shadowed him for years. "We've seen this before," Ms. Clark said, her voice clear and unwavering, addressing not just the jury but the entire courtroom, the entire city. Different names, different officers, same story. The assumption of guilt based on skin color. The casual disregard for rights. The lack of consequences for those who abuse their power. She looked directly at the jury. Kendra Ellis's experience wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a sickness that has plagued our community for too long. Holding Officer Dawson accountable is a step, but healing requires more. It requires acknowledging the pattern. It requires changing the system that allows this pattern to continue. Her testimony was devastatingly effective. It connected Kendra's specific trauma to a larger, historical narrative of injustice, resonating powerfully within the courtroom and beyond. Rick Dawson was found guilty on both counts. The conviction, coupled with the sustained community pressure organized by Anna's coalition, proved decisive. The Charlotte City Council, facing relentless advocacy and the undeniable evidence of systemic flaws, voted to approve a landmark ordinance mandating department-wide use of body cameras and establishing the independent civilian oversight board Anna's group had fought for. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a significant, hard-won victory. The wheels of justice grind slowly, and the scars of injustice often remain long after verdicts are rendered and ordinances passed. Yet, in the aftermath of the reckoning, new beginnings started to take root in the soil of East Charlotte. Marcus Carter, having seen firsthand the vulnerability of his own family and community, found a new mission alongside his military duties. He began volunteering his off-duty time, partnering with local community centers to mentor Black youth. He didn't teach them combat skills, but the principles behind his training: discipline, self-awareness, strategic thinking, and perhaps most importantly, self-advocacy. He taught them how to know their rights, how to remain calm under pressure, how to document interactions, and how to channel their frustrations into constructive action rather than destructive despair. He showed them that strength wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and communal. Kendra Ellis, forever changed by her ordeal, discovered a new calling born from her pain. The outpouring of support she received, particularly from other mothers who shared similar, often unspoken, experiences of fear and harassment, inspired her. With help from Anna and Ms. Clark, she started a support group, Mothers for Justice and Healing. It became a safe space for women impacted by police violence or misconduct to share their stories, navigate trauma, access resources, and support each other. They organized childcare during meetings, shared tips on navigating the legal system, and simply offered a listening ear, transforming shared vulnerability into collective strength. The broken pieces of her life were slowly being reassembled, not into what they were before, but into something stronger, infused with purpose. Jake Collins's reporting on the Kendra Ellis case, Dawson's history, and the subsequent fight for reform earned him a Peabody Award. His work didn't just expose the rot in Charlotte. It became a case study, cited in discussions about police accountability and civilian oversight in cities across the nation, proving that dedicated journalism could still be a powerful catalyst for change. Sunlight streamed through the windows of a gently used but clean and reliable minivan, a donation coordinated by Ms. Clark's church and Anna's network after news spread about Kendra's totaled Civic. Kendra was behind the wheel, her grip easy now, her shoulders relaxed. The minivan hummed smoothly, a comforting sound that contrasted sharply with the memory of the Civic's death rattle. In the back seat, Jaden and Nia, strapped securely into new, untapped car seats, were chanting, their voices bright with childish glee. "Go, Mama, go! Go, Mama, go!" They weren't looking back. They were looking forward, caught up in the simple joy of motion, of heading towards the park on a sunny Saturday morning. Riding shotgun, Marcus Carter watched his sister, a genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. He saw the lingering shadows of trauma, yes, but he also saw the fierce resilience, the reclaimed strength. He saw the mother bear, protective and determined, steering her family towards a brighter horizon. Kendra caught his eye in the rearview mirror and returned his smile, hers tinged with gratitude and a newfound sense of peace. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. The fight for true justice, for a world where her children wouldn't have to fear the flashing lights, was far from over. But today, in this moment, with her children laughing, her brother beside her, and the engine running strong beneath them, there was hope. The system had bent, forced by the convergence of courage, community, and consequence. And Kendra Ellis, single mother, nurse, survivor, advocate, kept driving forward. Thank you for watching. We hope Kendra's journey resonated and offered value. Moved by her strength and the community's fight? Keep these vital stories visible. Please like, share this message, and subscribe for more impactful content.